Welcome, everyone, to Circle City Conversations. Thank you for joining us today for our conversation. Thank you to our sponsor, Hurst, Limontes, an Indiana law firm with many years of experience helping injured Hoosiers. We are here with a great trial lawyer, a mother trucker, a wife, and someone who, like me, likes helping people seek justice, my friend Amy Davis. Amy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Amy, we like to start simple here and just kind of ask you a little bit about where you're from and how'd you get started?
I am from Madison County, a little town called Frankton.
Oh, yeah.
My family actually lived with an Anderson address, but that is the high school I went to. Very small. Class was 72 people.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
And,
go ahead.
Well, no, you're fine. And then did you wind up at a small college, too, in a small town?
I did. So I was a basketball player, and I started when I was 7 and had some pretty good teams at Frankton. We were the first team ever in school history, boys or girls, to go to win sectional. And
Nice.
Then we went to semi-state 2 years in a row and got beat by one of the private schools each year. So I wanted to play still. So I got recruited by some smaller D1 schools, but the likelihood of somebody who is as short as me, about between 5'3" and 5'4", getting to start and play a lot was not going to be likely. And so I ended up going to Anderson University. And the way they do some interesting scholarship things, and you went to Hanover, right? So what they do there sometimes, maybe I shouldn't say it on here, is you can find matching church scholarships to kind of help supplement your tuition. And my mom also worked at the university, so I got a tuition exchange. So between her tuition exchange, my academic scholarships, and the church scholarships that were matching, tuition was pretty much paid for.
Yeah. So the Ravens, right?
The Ravens. I was an Eagle in high school, a Raven in college, so, always flying is what I like to say.
That's funny. What position did you play?
Point guard.
And so did you play all 4 years there?
I did.
Yeah?
Yep.
Some of the skills that you learned, I know a lot of trial lawyers that played competitive sports. What's some of the crossover there between playing competitive sports, especially up in the college level, and being a trial lawyer?
I think it's just having a competitive drive that matters the most. So, and also having to work with other people all the time.
Right.
So in this industry, we see the same faces over and over again, and you have to know how to work with those people. And you don't want to, get on the bad side of somebody you don't want to be short-sighted about it, because you will see them again. It's not a huge legal community here. So, but that's very similar to growing up in the AAU circuit and playing a sport really competitively. You do see those same people all the time. So you kind of learn the way they do things. Yeah. You learn how to guard somebody. It's very similar in the legal setting, because you kind of know the way a case is going to go.
Yep.
Because people rarely change the way they do things.
Right. Especially in trial, some of the older trial lawyers that have been around for a while, right?
Got a script.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
It's funny. So what was your motivation to want to be an attorney? Was this something that happened in undergrad at Anderson or after that?
Kind of a number of things all together. So I think the first thing that happened in my life was when I was about 12 years old, my grandfather had a tumor on his thyroid, and he went in for resection of the tumor at one of the hospitals in the Fort Wayne area, and they got the tumor out, but there was an issue with either a breathing tube or a nicking of his windpipe, and he woke up from surgery and said, I don't feel pressure and I can breathe. But then it just got progressively worse, and he started going downhill really fast. He was swelling everywhere, and they called the doctor I can't remember how many times it was in the double digits of times that they paged the doctor, and the doctor never showed up. He suffocated because there was a nick in his windpipe. And Deb Pennington was his lawyer for the malpractice case. And, I didn't have much involvement with it back then, but what I knew is it shouldn't have happened.
Right.
And there was somebody that was helping my family.
Yeah.
And I think it stuck with me, but it wasn't like the trigger that said, I want to do this.
How old were you then?
I was about 12.
12 years old.
And then, moving forward, playing sports, you kind of always, I don't know if it's all of us that are athletes, but there's always some kind of like, maybe I should teach and coach, or maybe, you never know exactly what you want to do, but kind of you want to be around sports because there's just something about it that you don't really get that kind of excitement in other areas. And I was thinking maybe I want to do that. I was I didn't know what I wanted to do towards the end of college, and my dad was working for Mitch Daniels at the time, and he was running for governor for the first time. And he said, well, you want to come intern on the campaign? And I was like, well, I guess I don't know what else I'm going to do this summer. So I did that and helped through the whole election because he won, and then eventually got a job in the administration working for Family and Social Services as a legislative liaison. And so basically a legislative liaison in an agency, we would go to like our agency department heads and help them find legislators to sponsor the agenda they wanted to get passed.
I see.
And you sort of operate as a lobbyist for the agency, but we think we even had to register as them, but we don't have like the fun perks of being a lobbyist.
Right. All the work stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started doing that kind of stuff. So I really originally, when I went to law school, thought I would end up in the hallways of the State House. And instead, it was my second year, and I was trying to find something to do for the summer, and I wound up at an injury firm. And growing up pretty conservative, there was not a super rosy outlook towards trial lawyers in my family, in my experience. And so what I found was when I was working at that firm is like very rarely do people come to an injury lawyer because they want to.
Right.
In that every single person I ever represented was really hurt. Because what I found out very quickly is if you take a bad case, if you take a liar, you are going to lose money.
Yeah.
And so it is not worth it to do.
Right.
And, I think that really changed my perspective on what this area of the law looked like and who it served.
Yeah. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
So you went to law school downtown, right?
Yes.
What were, you went to law school, graduated. What were kind of like the early days of your career like?
I think just scary. Law school, I think people have this misconception that it teaches you how to be a lawyer.
No.
And many of the classes actually that would teach you how to be a lawyer are on the weekends. So, maybe there probably needs to be something done within administration of law schools to say, like, well, where are we placing our values, right? That would be very helpful if you want to litigate down the road and you really want to be a lawyer when you're in law school. But, really the purpose is to learn how to think. Yeah. And, I think when I first got out, I was, no one teaches you anything except for, you go watch, right? So luckily, I had been friends with some just lawyers in the community, and the person I was working for at the time his name is Rod Tucker, and he put a message out to the listserv and just said, hey, I have a young attorney in my office. She really would like to see a trial. Does anyone have something coming up? And Gloria Danielson, who she was at Ladendorf at the time, she had a trial coming up in federal court, and she said that they were going to be doing this workshop with the trial skills group that did things, she said, a la Jerry Spence style. I didn't know who Jerry Spence was at that time, and so I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought, well, hey, this could be cool. So I showed up, and met like my people in this industry. So Betsy Green was there, Gloria, Brent Gill, just people in this industry who have really devoted themselves to making sure not only that they're improving their own practice, but that they're teaching the next generation of lawyers like how to do things.
Right.
And I feel like that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me as a lawyer, because, my entire career I've been able to be trained by Betsy Green, Gloria Danielson, Brent Gill, like some of these people that have just done amazing things and are incredible teachers and patient and want to see you succeed.
Yep.
And, I don't think there could be a better experience than to have those people in your corner.
So you met them very early on in your career.
Probably, I can't remember if I had graduated from law school yet.
Yeah.
So, they've been in my life.
That's awesome.
For a long time.
They are. They're wonderful people.
Yes.
And you mentioned the Jerry Spence School of Thought, Jerry Spence's trial college. I've never had the pleasure, and I think now with my kids being so little and we have so many of them, I don't know if I will, but tell me a little bit more about that experience.
So trial skills, we actually do some of the techniques that you learn in the college. So the whole idea behind it is, I guess the first thing you want to kind of know how to, like what your own blocks are or what your own problems are before you can tell somebody else's story.
Exactly.
And so, we don't really do this in skills group, but when you go to the college, you really work on personal work that entire first week.
Yeah.
So it really does, they try to, it's focused on trying to find out who you are and what makes you tick and what you're afraid of. So you know what you're afraid of and you can do something about it.
You're afraid of something?
I'm afraid of everything. I just fake it really well. But at our group, what we try to do and what is really the value in it is to be able to put ourselves in our client's shoes.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of what's called reversing roles, where we actually pretend to be our client.
Yeah.
And one of the best thing about it is that really quickly the questions you need to ask your client the next time you see them.
Yeah.
Because the group that's around you is going to ask you all the things that a jury is going to want to know.
Right.
And if you don't know those things, you don't know your person. And so that's been the greatest value in it, besides just seeing people do some fun stuff. Because, another great thing about skills group is that I don't ever try anything for the first time in the courtroom. I have people I try stuff out on first. So if it is, I do like a first person opening where it seems a little wonky, I can get the words around, like my mouth around the words not in the courtroom for the first time. So if it goes bad, then I'm like, I'm not doing that. Right. Instead of doing it and it going terrible and the jury looking at me like, what did this woman just do? So, I think that's been like being able to really have empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk a lot about empathy these days, but I don't think they realize a lot of the time it just means putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right.
And that is the greatest skill you can have if you're a trial lawyer, because we are, privileged to be able to tell a story for somebody who really isn't going to be able to do it without us.
Exactly.
So that, having that experience and learning that way with like the Spence type stuff is, has been really invaluable. And the college, going to the college experience was, it was a whole different set of like, different experience in trial skills group for sure. Because it's like you're away for 3 weeks. So the first week is like personal psychodrama, which can be like super traumatizing, especially if you're not ready for it. Now, I was lucky enough to have been in the trial skills group, so I kind of knew a little bit.
Coming. Yeah.
Not really knew what was coming, but I knew a little bit about how it worked. And then the second week is like working on specific skills. So one day would have been, jury selection. The next day was opening. The next day was direct and cross, and then closing. So you'd have like a week of doing that. Then I think they gave us a break for the weekend, and then we came back and did mocks on the last week.
Wow.
So it was very, very cool experience. I think, when I went, my daughter, I just had one kiddo then, and she was about to turn 2, but I was still breastfeeding at the time. And so
gosh.
now it was, it was just when she went to bed at that point.
Yeah.
But that was really, the first week it was like, I don't think I can do this. There's no cell service at Spence Mountain. You have to drive up to the top of a mountain to talk to your kids or your spouse or whoever. And one day we did get the video chat to work, and she just was so confused by that. And I was just devastated after that first week. So the first week I'm like, there's no way I can do this. Second week I was like, okay, I only have 1 week left. And the third week I was like, what family?
Oh my gosh. So let's talk a little bit about some different cases that you've tried.
Okay.
You won a big verdict out in small town Indiana in Knox County. And you won Indiana Trial Lawyers Association Trial Lawyer of the Year for that, right?
That is correct.
Tell me a little bit about that case.
So that case, my person in that case, when this happened, he was 42 years old. His name is Roger. So I had he and his wife. His wife had a consortium claim, so her claim is it's derivative, so it's because of his claim.
Right.
And they were just wonderful people. Yeah. And I think that it made me want to be better and get better to be able to represent them well. And so what happened is Roger was on his way to work. He would drive from Lawrenceville, Illinois to Evansville every day for work. And this particular day, it was foggy, and foggy enough that they had to, it was a 2-hour delay at school.
Yeah.
And he was on his way to work just on 41. It's really foggy. It's really easy to let your speed creep up on that road because it's flat. There's nothing around. It's a pretty boring drive. And it's 4 lanes. So 2 lanes going one direction, 2 lanes going the other. So it's easy to creep up. So he was trying to be, safe. And so he put his cruise on at under the speed limit. So I think the speed limit was 50. And as he's on his way, he all of a sudden just sees red slightly in front of him. And he does all the things right. One of the things you learn when you're a lawyer is when people are stressed and someone turns in front of them, they often steer into the turn.
I see.
But what happened with Roger is he did everything right. He steered away from the car that was going across the road, but he still could. It was a truck. It was a beer truck that had this wasn't a normal light or intersection like that. It was a break in the roadway, and the driver of the other vehicle, it was a beer truck for a very 5-generation company that was a beer distributor. So the driver was trying to get to, I think, the 40 and 8 or something one of those places to deliver beer. And he ends up testifying for me that he couldn't see 200 feet in front of him or 200 feet behind him, so he went for it and risked it.
Yeah.
So he turns in front of Roger, and then Roger does everything he can, but he crashes into the rear end of the truck, and he gets a really, we didn't know that he had a brain injury at the time, but he had a concussion. He fractured C7, the bottom of his neck, and T1, the top of his spine, or thoracic spine, and then he had 6 broken ribs. So when this first happened, that's all that he could feel was the rib pain. Because I think if you've ever broken a rib, that is horrible. You can't cough, you can't laugh, you can't move. So the rib pain was just on fire. And then over time, as his physical injury started to heal, he started having these unrelenting, awful migraines that stemmed from a brain injury. So we had difficulty at first because he really, in the initial stages, wanted to get it done and over with. So he was just pushing for just to move on. But then it was probably, I can't remember if it was a year after this happened or maybe a year and a half, he was driving to work and he just doesn't remember anything else. He had to pull off the side of the road and go to the emergency room. It was a migraine that was so bad it caused a blackout.
Oh my gosh.
And after that happened, I was like, nope, we're not done.
Yeah.
We're going to find you somebody that can help you figure out what this is and deal with it. And that's what we did. It took a long time to find out what was going on. But because it took a long time to find out what was going on, the defense side of it was like, well, he was, the rib fractures were healed. The spine fractures were healed. The neck fractures were healed. And I was constantly fighting about, but there is something going on here.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to demonstrate what's going on here. So what I didn't know about that case before I went to trial is that liability was going to be an issue.
It's a left-hand turn case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Truck turning left hand.
And he's struck in the rear.
Yep. And so, there's a lot of rules within the trucking industry that say, if you are making a left-hand turn, you need to have like the tail end of your truck off of the roadway before the vehicle gets there. But I don't know. I don't think that everybody really holds anyone to that standard. And I think too, depending on how a case is litigated and how a attorney approaches that situation, it can affect what a jury is going to be willing to do when they're assessing liability. So if they're going to go after somebody who has brain injury and has all these things that going on with them, and they're going to say, you did this and you did that, and be really mean, I think that liability would have been no problem for me. But if they're treated with respect, it's like, well, we'll give them some.
Yep.
And that's what ended up happening in this case. And I did a bunch of focus groups beforehand. I asked like a million questions of so many different people. I had so much help from my skills group. We did a full day with my clients. I went to their house and I lived with them for like 2 days just to see, talk to all his people.
Yeah.
The first time I went out, I had Roger and Michelle host a barbecue. And I told them, do not tell them. Don't tell them who I am. Don't tell your friends who I am. Just like, I'm your friend from Indianapolis. I'm just hanging out, checking out Knox County and seeing you guys. And that is how I found all of my damage witnesses. So I ended up having like the across the street neighbor, not all of them, all but one, and the doctors, of course. But I had an across the street neighbor. I had like people that you wouldn't normally think of, just that all could tell a different story about the way they saw. One was what was he in? He was in one of those organizations. I can't believe I forget what this is.
Like a VFW or something
but
like
it's
that, American Legion or Lions Club or...
They have a name. It's very secretive.
Oh.
Or they're very secretive about stuff. Oh, he's going to kill
Shriners?
me if he listens. No, it's not Shriners. If he hears this, he's going to be so mad at me that I didn't remember.
We'll edit this part out.
Right, but somebody that was in this organization with him that he was going to be an officer in, and he couldn't gabble in the meetings because he was so sensitive to sound after all this happened.
That's crazy.
But that was just like a very, you don't tell that story in a long time, but it's impactful.
Right.
And we tried not to, tell the same thing over and over again. I really tried not to bore my jury and get people on, get people off, keep it moving. And I think it served me and my clients well, but I had like so many people just pulling for me and with me. I had a woman from California, her name's Kelly Hanker, who had been at this conference that we had met a long time ago called Embrace Your Inner Badass. It's like a women's conference that's put on by the Nevada Justice Association. And I couldned go to that year because I had the trial coming up, but she had gone to it the weekend before the trial, and she called me. I think it had to have been Saturday before trial was set to begin on Monday or Tuesday. I think we had final pretrial stuff on Monday, and then we started on Tuesday. And she said, hey, do you have somebody sitting with you every day at trial? And I was like, I think I've got most days, right? Because I had Amy Pardick, a jury trial consultant with me on Monday. And Kate Franke was coming with me on like days 2 and 3, but couldn't be there for closing. And I was like, well, I have kind of coverage, but not like every day. And she's like, well, I'm coming. And she came and she spent the whole week with me.
Oh my
She's so helpful. And I'm still very, very grateful to her for doing that. But it's just, the kind of community that you build by just going out and networking. Sometimes if you are okay with asking for help, people are almost willing to offer. If they try cases, for sure, they'll answer a call. They'll be there if you need them.
And she was there during voir dire?
Mm-hmm. She got there night before I think the day she flew out right away. As soon as I said I didn't have somebody every day, she came.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened in that case?
Oh, so, there's one more story I want to tell about the doctor, because we had a salt of the earth, wonderful hometown doctor who everybody knew. And this man spent tons of time with me, knew Roger, knew his family. He is just a fixture of the community. And he, unfortunately, had to have hip surgery, just a few days before the trial. I had told him a long time before I wanted him to be there, because he's just so effective in person. He just he's just a great guy. And he came anyway, even though he had just had surgery.
Oh, my gosh.
He sat on a pillow on the witness stand. And, him being willing to, I'm almost getting emotional, talking about it, but him being willing to stand up for his patient in the way he did when he was in a ton of pain himself just spoke volumes to everyone. And I just will never forget. He and his wife were just great people, and his advocacy for his patient really, I think, is part of what carried the day.
Absolutely.
So what we did in that case, we actually had a judge who it was her first civil trial. Mm-hmm. So Amy gave me the advice, well, you know what, if it's her first, why don't you just tell her how it's going to go, right? Or why don't you set the schedule? So we put together a very aggressive day-to-day schedule, and this is how we're going to do this. We're going to do this at this time. And we really tried to stay very close to that schedule. Mm-hmm. And it really, really helped us, even us, to organize what we needed to really get to the point of what I needed to get out and get off and get done. So we just ran a really, really tight ship that week. And we had some amazing testimony from damage witnesses. I had a really good cross of the defense expert with the help. Kelly helped a lot because she was writing a book with Dorothy Clay Sims at the time. And so Dorothy, I had recorded the IME, and Dorothy, the week of trial, she was like, I'm too busy, I can't do this. But Dorothy is she can't help herself sometimes, but I'm not trying to keep that a secret. She sometimes she can't help but help, because that's just who she is. Yeah. And she watched it anyway, and she came up with a bunch of list of questions.
Oh, that's
some of them I didn't even know what I was saying when I was asking the doctor about the thing, but I pretended like I did, and he was so thrown off by that. And I kept saying, because I had the video, which is really critical if you have a DME, make sure you have a video if you can, if your judge will allow it, because every time he said something that was well, that's wrong, I would say, oh, you remember I have the video. We can go get that part. It's already clipped. And then he'd be like, oh, no. You know, this is, yeah, you're right. But that was, a lot of that was a combination of her and Kelly, trying to get me what I needed and getting it to me in right before, real quick, in real time. Wow. It was very cool. And, I think I might use this expert again. So, but it was very effective. And the jury, was just pretty much done with that expert because of that cross and because of the way that they helped me prepare for it. And then we had a supervisor for my client who was very effective, who was very effective as a before and after damage witness, because my client before had, afterwards, his cognitive ability decreased. I wouldn't say significantly, but enough to notice. Mm-hmm. So if you met him, you would be like, oh, that's a nice guy, but he may not remember you, right, afterward. So it became this thing where we had to talk a lot about the inside versus the outside, and how someone can look a certain way, but inside the story is so much different. Yeah. And that was really something that Amy Pardick helped me develop, and I love her dearly. That was such a bonding experience being with her. She worked with Polly Westcott was the person that helped us with our brain injury part of the story. And Amy, like the night before trial, it was Kelly, me, I think Kate had been there no, it wouldn't have been the night before that Kate was there. Maybe she was because we ended up only doing voir dire on the first day, and then Kate did get there. So I think it was Kate, Kelly, me, Polly, and Amy, and we're just having a great time.
Yeah.
Like just coming together and like riffing off of each other and getting this thing ready to go. And it was, there's a picture of it. I'll never forget that moment. It was just this beautiful, like women coming together to tell somebody's story who needed us.
Right. So
it was just, then during the course of the trial, it was like, then I think I had a real big freak out moment the night before closing. I had like convinced myself I was going to lose this case because
that's what happens right before the end.
I wasn't sure what I was going to ask for, like exactly what I was going to do. And Kelly was like, well, you got to know why. And you got to tell them why. And I was like, but do I? And it was like very much do I have to know exactly why, or can I just like tell them that this is it, right? And just believe it. So, but I was going nuts. I totally convinced myself that I was going to lose. And Joe Freed, Kelly somehow got him on the phone the morning of my closing as we're driving there.
Oh, wow.
And he just was like, Amy, he had talked to me about the case over the course of before I tried it. And he's like, and he's a trial lawyers college guy. So that's where, that network came into play. And he said, you know this case better than anybody else, and you've got this, and I know like it's so strange who can say that and when it hits, right? Right. And then Duran Keller, who was a part of the trial skills group too, he was like, I was running on a treadmill that morning, and he's like doing a sort of, he did a closing just like not knowing the case very well, but just did it for me as I'm running, just so I could, hear something. Yeah. And so I'd stop freaking out. So I just had like I really have an amazing support group around me with like very talented, giving people. Yeah. And I, in that sort of, and then my mom came, was at the final day, and so was George Gray for my closing. And my mom kind of met me in the bathroom. I was having a hard time getting my hair to stay up too. And I'm a person that plays with my hair a lot, so I cannot have it
down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was trying to help me with that. And my dad had passed in 2017. And as she was getting ready to come, she found he used to like hide money all over the house. Mm-hmm. She called them his like treasure chests. So she found one of his treasure chests somewhere like in the house. And she was like, I think it's a sign. I think he wants you to know that this is the day that he bet on you. And she gave it to me and put it in my pocket before closing. And that morning, the defense came to me and he's like, did you get my email last night? Because we offered like $1 million, over $1 million, right? At this point in my career, I'd never settled a case. Well, that's not true. But on my own, I had never settled a case.
You were a solo at this
Yes,
time.
I was all by myself then, which is why my network of people were so important to me. Mm-hmm. At that time, on my own, I had never settled a case for more than $1 million. But I knew what I had done that week. And this is really risky, right? Because you don't know if you're ever going to get it again. I knew what I had done that week. I knew who my client was. I knew who his people who spoke for him were. And I knew that wasn't enough for what he had been through and what he was going to continue to go through. And I said no and did the thing. And then the jury was out. I can't remember exactly how long anymore. It's always the longest time ever. I think they're about 2 hours and 45 minutes, close to 3 hours. The whole time, Roger was like, oh, God, should we have taken that money? And I was like, don't bring it up. Just pretend like it didn't happen.
The longest 2.5 hours of your life.
And then when you get the call, right, that they're in, then it's like, and we walk back over. I was holding his hand, and the jury says we have a verdict, and the judge asks what it is, and they say verdict in favor of the plaintiff but they gave him 40% liability, and I was like, oh no, I should have taken the money. That's what I was thinking, right? And then they said $4.24 million and verdict for the plaintiff, Michelle Nelms, in the amount of $1 million. So 4.26 for Roger, $1 million on the consortium, for a total of 5.
That's a big consortium verdict. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I don't think that now somebody's going to check me on this. So somebody give me the deets. But like, I'm pretty sure it's the largest verdict for consortium in Knox County for sure. But
yeah, in Knox County. I mean, they probably don't see a lot of civil cases.
I mean, we had made by the time that it had ended, the case had ended. We were like best buds with all of the security down at the courthouse. Like, I mean, I think that's something. If there's any advice anybody would want, is just to treat court staff like royalty, because they really can make or break your life when you're in the courtroom for a week. And they honestly, like, I think, as some can be a little rude sometimes, but that job is hard. Oh yeah. They don't get paid enough. Mm-hmm. And but I think most people just really want to help, right? And they want to help, and they want you to be nice to them. Mm-hmm. And so, we just had a wonderful court staff in Knox County in that courtroom, and I was very grateful for them. It was just, that was like just a magical moment. I think for the rest of my life, I will wonder how I got 40% liability in that case, because I had the guy saying I went for it and risked it. But you know what? I really do give a lot of credit to Van Willis was on the other side of that case, and he was the most respectful person to my client. Oh yeah, I bet that helped. And I think that really made the difference that he treated him so well. Yeah. And really a gentleman and someone I really valued having tried that case with. Just a really good man, a good lawyer, and it was a good experience. That's awesome. Yeah. So let's change gears. Talk about you personally, aside from trying cases. What are some of kind of like your hobbies and things you like to do outside of the law? So most of my life currently has hit like what I'm now referring to as the chauffeur stage. Oh yeah. So I used to do a lot of like rec sports and things like that, where it was just like things that I could get together with friends, with my husband, and we could have some physical activity and like this competitive outlet. But like with the girls playing sports now, it's almost impossible to do that. So we're like pretty much, we were running around a lot, getting them to their stuff. And we're actually doing a lot of coaching because all the leagues they play in like have a serious lack of coaches. And so, seriously, we had coached soccer this year, and I didn't know anything about soccer, but like, I think that's the thing that you learn real quickly. Like, you just have to tell everybody what your comfort level with the coaching is. Yeah. Like, I can coach basketball any day, but like soccer is a little bit different. But it's been really fun to do, just to get to know like how these kids, how they learn, the things that they like to do, how at 6 o'clock on a Thursday after school all day when it's hot, like how you keep their attention, and everybody's tired and nobody's their best self when they're tired. So it's been really fun to kind of do those things. And then I think, my husband and I try to, make sure that we have date night and do things for ourselves. I think what we're really trying to do now is like, there's just this thing happening with the younger generation where they hit a certain age and then there's like this big depression. I think social media is part of it, but I also think it's because they didn't see their parents have a lot of fun. Yeah. Like we saw when we were kids, we saw our parents like have a lot of fun. Yeah. Like for the most part, my parents did stuff all the time. I think like we, especially with these like year-round sports and stuff, like a lot of our time as parents is devoted to the sports. So we try to show our kids that you can be an adult and have fun too. Right. So we're trying, because I want them to see that. I don't want them to be like, oh, it's all over when I turn 23. Because I've been seeing I've listened to some focus group podcasts, and they're like these college students that get done. They're like, it's over now.
Yeah, lifestyle.
Like, I don't want my kids to get to that point and like feel that way. Like, I want them to see us being able to like live a life and have a fun time, and it doesn't have to just be about them, but it can also be about them.
Right.
Like, it's an and conversation, not an either or.
Yeah. Do any of the girls play basketball? Yes,
Nora just started playing. Now, Maggie, I'm not sure how she's going to feel about it, but I had a really funny moment in one of her last leagues. I had a really, really great group of girls that they were fun to coach, but there's just a different voice that you sometimes use when it's your kid.
Yeah.
And after the game, one of the other parents said that the grandparents had come, and they were like looking at him when I yelled at her one time, and he's like, he like puts his hand on, he's like, coach's daughter. Yeah. I was like, I probably need to check that though. So I still have to like check myself when I get a little bit too intense. Like I can't. It's her first time, right? I can't expect her to like.
Exactly. That's funny.
I wasn't amazing the first time I played, even though I like to think I was.
That's so funny. Your husband, he is a big Star Wars fan, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
To say the least.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Are you as big of a fan?
So I think that's something we initially bonded over because I really liked the original trilogy. So I knew a lot about it, but not near as much. I mean, I didn't read books or anything.
Right.
So I enjoyed it and I really liked it. And I think that's when, he kind of knows at this point, like, who's a real fan and who isn't. Right. So I think that the fact that I could, like, quote lines from the movie and that kind of thing was like, oh, this is cool. Like, she's not going to know about my, like, collecting hobby and be like, oh, God, what did I get into? Like, she's going to be okay with that side of me. I can let her see it. Yeah. So I think that was, like, a good icebreaker for us. But, yeah.
And the girls are big fans, too?
They are sometimes. Like, we've watched all the things. They love the Star Wars part of Disney World. So we're getting ready to go back for fall break.
You are?
Here in a couple of weeks,
Yeah, we're going in December.
Yep. So Mark and I, whenever we go to where that is in the park, we wear our, like, I love you, I know outfits because we're those people.
That's funny.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. It's fun, though. We love to play it up. And I love to make fun of him for it. I think it's like one of those things for him, it's like his grounding thing. That's the way I think about it, right? Like, he could have been, he's 6'5" and pretty good looking guy. Like, he could have been like a cocky jerk, and instead, like, he's got this inner nerd that kind of kept him. He's got the dork that's still around, so he was always kind of like self-conscious about that. So I think that was kind of something that, I think I like that about him. I like that he it's like a little boyhood thing too. Like, he really enjoys it, and it's nostalgic, and it's like harmless and fun. Yeah. Although awesome. I did tell him when we were first, before we had kids, and before we decided to have kids, because we weren't sure at first, was that I said, I think my whole life is going to be like, no, those are Daddy's Star Wars toys. And sometimes it is, but he keeps that door shut most of the time.
I mean, if you had boys.
Oh, gosh, I can't imagine. Because it's not just Star Wars now. It's like Ninja Turtles and like the WWE stuff from like the 2000s. Mm-hmm. But I grew up with brothers, so I watched a lot of WWF back then. Right, so I knew these people, and I think that that has always been sign of, that sports has always really bonded us. Right.
So what's next for you, Amy?
So next for me is like I am back in solo practice. So I'm back to Law Office of Amy M. Davis. I have a magazine cover coming out. Like, really? Like, I think in the next week or so, maybe the next couple of weeks. So that's really exciting. Awesome. They did like a 10-page story, and it's a lot about, it's called, the publication is World's Leaders, and it's like leaders in law for this year, and women too, women leaders in law. And so a lot of what we talk about in there is like how there aren't a lot of women in this industry. No. And
especially trial lawyers.
Yes, exactly. And so, but there are a lot of women that are civil defense attorneys. Yes. And I really think that we have gifts to offer plaintiffs that, some people don't have, right? And I think that there is an opportunity in this industry for women, and that I want to be part of promoting that and bringing along this the next generation of women to see like this is an option for them, and they can be really good at it.
Oh, I know. I've got one of those too.
Yes, you do.
Working here, so.
She is one of my very good friends, and you are lucky to have her, and I know you know it.
Yeah. We just did an episode on that Fulton County case. She tried and bifurcated the premises case.
Yep.
But it was like coming up with Bill, he's a great trial lawyer,
Yes.
old school. It's like you never bifurcate.
Yep.
But sometimes, it really benefits your client.
It does.
Yeah.
And, I will say to you, Alex, like I am so grateful that you let me borrow her sometimes to try cases with you, because she and I had a great one together at the beginning at the end of last year now. Also, and she's, she and I are very much of like, we don't want to stay stagnant in this industry, and we also don't want to accept what the defense norms for settlement are.
Exactly.
Like, we want to get full justice for our clients, and we push each other to go get that every day.
Yeah, I love that. That's why you guys are great trial lawyers.
Yep.
So,
and I appreciate you letting me have her from time to time.
So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that? Well,
the best way right now is email or my website. So the email is amy@indy.law, or my website is www.indyinjury.law. So don't forget the .law part. That confuses people sometimes, but it's a way to get a good domain for cheap.
For an affordable rate,
Yes,
right? Yeah. Well, and I'm sure if they Googled you, they'd get that information.
Oh, for sure. There's a little bit of a transition right now to make sure like all the things are switched back over to the solo practice, but everything should be available here in the next couple weeks or so. I'll have like my number again. So right now the best way is website or email.
We'll put it all in the show notes as well. So, well, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Circle City Conversations podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more future conversations.